It's 6:30 a.m. in New York. Markets haven't opened yet, but oil futures are already up 18%. European gas contracts spike overnight. Shipping insurers suspend coverage for vessels entering the Persian Gulf. And breaking news banners flash across every major network. Iran deploys naval mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Within hours, the world feels it. Gas stations adjust prices before noon. Airlines revise ticket costs. Governments call emergency meetings. All because of one narrow stretch of water, just 21 miles wide at its tightest point, the Strait of Hormuz. A choke point so critical that nearly 1/5 of the world's oil flows through it every single day. But here's the real question. If Iran actually tried to close it, not just threaten, but act, could they succeed? And what would the global consequences really look like? Let's go deeper than headlines. The geography that controls energy. The Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and then to the Arabian Sea. To the north sits Iran. To the south, Oman and the United Arab Emirates. At its narrowest shipping lane, traffic is separated into just two channels, each about 2 miles wide. One inbound, one outbound. That's it. Through that narrow corridor passes oil from Saudi Arabia, Iraqi exports, Kuwaiti crude, Emirati shipments, almost all of Qatar's liquefied natural gas, and a portion of Iran's own exports, roughly 17 to 20 million barrels per day. To put that in perspective, if the strait shut down tomorrow, there is no pipeline network capable of replacing that volume. Saudi Arabia has the east-west pipeline to the Red Sea. The UAE has a pipeline bypassing Hormuz, but together, they handle only a fraction of total Gulf exports. The strait is not just a route, it is a bottleneck, and bottlenecks are leverage. Why Iran threatens it. Iran has threatened closure multiple times, especially during sanctions escalations, because it is one of the few pressure points Iran controls that impacts the entire global system. Iran cannot outmatch the US Navy conventionally. It cannot compete economically with Western coalitions, but it can disrupt. And in a globalized energy market, disruption is power. The threat alone influences oil markets. The possibility alone forces diplomatic recalculation. But threats are easy, execution is different. How Iran would attempt it. Closing the strait doesn't mean placing a physical gate across the water. It means making transit too dangerous or too expensive to continue. Iran has several tools. Naval mines, relatively cheap, highly disruptive, difficult and slow to clear. Even a few dozen strategically placed mines could halt traffic for days or weeks. Modern mines can be triggered by magnetic signatures or acoustic detection, meaning ships don't even have to touch them. During the 1980s tanker war, mines damaged multiple vessels, including a US Navy frigate. Traffic slowed, but it never completely stopped. Still, insurance rates exploded and markets reacted. Fast attack swarm boats. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Navy operates hundreds of small, high-speed boats. Individually weak, collectively disruptive. They are designed for swarm tactics, overwhelming larger ships with numbers. In a confined channel, this creates chaos quickly. Not decisive warfare, but strategic disruption. Coastal anti-ship missiles. Iran has layered missile systems along elevated coastal terrain. These missiles can target tankers moving at predictable speeds. Even one successful strike would cause temporary shipping suspension, not because every ship would be destroyed, but because no commercial operator wants to risk it. Drones and hybrid tactics. Iran has invested heavily in drone capabilities. Surveillance drones, explosive drones, GPS disruption in the strait has already been reported multiple times over the past decade. Disorientation in a narrow shipping lane can be enough to force temporary halts. So yes, Iran can create chaos, but chaos is not closure. The U.S. Fifth Fleet factor. The U.S. Fifth Fleet operates out of Bahrain, minutes away from the strait. It includes destroyers, mine countermeasure ships, submarines, surveillance aircraft carrier strike groups. If Iran laid mines, U.S. and allied forces would begin clearing operations almost immediately. If missile batteries fired, they would likely be targeted. If swarm boats engage, they would be neutralized. The US has rehearsed this scenario for decades, so the key point is this. Iran could disrupt, but sustaining a blockade would require surviving overwhelming retaliation. That's a different equation. Economic shockwaves. Let's assume disruption lasts 2-3 weeks. Oil could surge above $130, $150 per barrel. That impacts US gasoline prices, European inflation, Asian manufacturing costs, airline ticket pricing, food supply chains. Energy feeds into everything. In a high inflation environment, this becomes politically explosive. Central banks might delay interest rate cuts. Stock markets would likely fall sharply. Energy producers would rise. Consumers would suffer. Emerging markets dependent on fuel imports would be hit hardest. Europe's vulnerability. Europe has diversified gas supplies since the Russia-Ukraine war, but Qatar remains a major LNG supplier, and nearly all Qatari LNG passes through Hormuz. The disruption could tighten European gas markets again. Prices spike. Winter reserves become critical. Energy security becomes political again. The strait is not just about oil, it's about energy stability across continents. China's position. China imports massive volumes of Gulf oil. It also buys sanctioned Iranian oil quietly. Beijing prioritizes energy stability. If Iran moved to close Hormuz, China would face a dilemma: support a strategic partner or pressure Iran to maintain flow. China is unlikely to support prolonged disruption. Energy stability underpins its economic model, so diplomatic pressure from Beijing could emerge quickly. Would Iran actually do it? Closing the strait harms Iran too. Iran exports oil through that same waterway. Its economy depends on energy revenue. A closure would cut off its own export, trigger military retaliation, risk infrastructure damage, potentially escalate into regional war. Strategically, the threat may be more useful than the action, because once acted upon, escalation becomes unpredictable. Historical lessons: during the Iran-Iraq tanker war in the 1980s, hundreds of vessels were attacked, mines were deployed, missiles were fired, yet oil kept flowing. Naval escorts adapted, markets adjusted. The strait never fully closed. History suggests disruption, not total shutdown. The most realistic scenario, the most plausible outcome is short-term disruption, sharp oil spike, insurance suspension, diplomatic back-channel activity, military deterrence display, gradual stabilization. The world cannot afford prolonged closure, and neither can Iran. The nuclear escalation question: some analysts fear closure could trigger broader war, but major powers tend to avoid full-scale conflict over economic choke points. They respond proportionally: targeted strikes, naval escorts, economic sanctions, containment, not global war. World War III is unlikely from this single trigger alone. The bigger picture, the Strait of Hormuz, reveals something deeper. The global economy depends on geographic choke points, and choke points create leverage. Iran understands this. The US understands this. China understands this. The question is never just, can it be closed? The question is, who benefits more from keeping it open? And the answer is, almost everyone. So could Iran close the Strait of Hormuz temporarily? Yes. Permanently? Highly unlikely. Would markets panic? Absolutely. Would oil surge? Almost certainly. Would global recession risks rise? Possibly. But would the world allow it to remain closed? History says no, because the Strait of Hormuz is not just a regional waterway. It is one of the main arteries of the global economy, and when arteries are blocked, the entire system